Hello again. I have a very nice and old friend as guest who became a mayor of Sag Harbor, Jim. So nice to see you again, and I'm so happy you took some time out from your busy schedule to see me.
Well, it's my pleasure to come over. We haven't seen each other in too long. Like everybody else, COVID has gotten in the way of a lot. But you and I had a common background in writing plays and being part of a play group at Guildhall.
Yes.
And I'm trying to remember how far back that goes, but it goes back quite a
About
ways.
10 years.
10 years, wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Would you say I changed a little?
You're more beautiful than ever.
I wanted you to say that.
Okay.
Thank you.
But I didn't have to make it up.
Yes, and like you said, it's been 10 years, and then all of a sudden, I open up Dan's paper, and there you are. Jim Larocca became the mayor of Sag Harbor. Now, how cool can that be?
How cool can it be? Well, it's a lot of work. But,
The next time I'll open up that paper, it's going to say, Jim Larocca is the President of the United States.
oh, you should not wish that on anybody, especially a friend. No. This is, I'm no chicken, and this is a career I had in public service for many years. In state government, I worked on Capitol Hill, did a lot of different things, but I wasn't out to become mayor. But what happened is I just became concerned about the level of development, the size of the development that's happening. Sag Harbor is a very contained community. It's like 1 mile by 2 miles. It's very small, fewer than 3,000 people. And we have a boom in real estate, in tourism, and in recreation, and that's all very nice, but it has to be restrained. You can't just let it run wild, or the very characteristics of the community that have drawn people here will be lost. And so we have to preserve, I described it in the campaign as preserve, protect, and nourish what we have. And what we have took a couple of centuries to develop. And it can be wiped out very fast when the big guns come to town. So I ran to try to moderate the growth and the size and the high pressure activity that's been going on.
Well, yes, Sag Harbor is a quaint, in my opinion, a quaint town in the Hamptons. It doesn't even bear the name of Hampton, like Southampton, West Hampton, and all
Well,
that.
we got called the Unhampton or
Oh,
the non-Hampton.
Yes.
But it is a lot of people use the word quaint. I like the word authentic because people talk about planning and planned communities, and we've seen some of these things in Florida where Disney and others have built whole developments of cute little gingerbread houses and picket fences and everything else. But it's not authentic. Sag Harbor grew up on its own for a couple of centuries, and the result is the one you see. A mix of houses, a strong community feeling. Volunteer fire department is probably the social center of the village, and the ambulance corps is also a volunteer organization. So it has a very authentic American characteristic, but it came about carefully over many years, and it can be threatened, or it is threatened now, by people who have brought in their own ideas, and they think, for example, we've had proposals to put condominiums on the waterfront. I don't like that. The village doesn't like it. The waterfront is the focal point of our civic life, our economic life, our environment, just simply the place where you take a stroll. And we don't need 20 or 40 condominiums between us and the water. So it started for me as an argument as simple as that. And there was a property just west of the big wharf, the Long Wharf, where there were derelict buildings, And a series of owners came along. They wanted to build 20 units, 18 units, 8 units, and so forth. And the point was, we didn't have in our code a protection against the waterfront getting converted into, I don't know, Port Washington or one of those places
Yes.
which allows apartments right to the water. Now, there are places where that's very nice. I've seen them, I've been to them. But it doesn't fit our identity, the characteristics that make our village special. So, starting about 5 or 6 years ago, started an effort to get that first piece of property, which was sitting derelict for 20 years, to come in as a new Sag Harbor Village Park. And we went to the town of Southampton. We got community preservation money, and we, with the town, the property was acquired and then turned over to the village, and it is now John Steinbeck Waterfront Park.
Oh.
There are no condominiums, there are no apartment houses, there are no high-rises, there are no low-rises. It is simply a beautiful park that faces to the west. And 2 weeks ago, we had the American Music Festival in Sag Harbor, and we had a stage in the park, a portable stage, a big one. And each night, the Saturday and Sunday, we had a show scheduled around 6 or 6:30, with the sun setting beautifully in the west, exciting music on stage, people dancing in front of the stage, children running around. The organizers put out hay bales for seating, but the little kids, of course, just started chomping on it. Before you know it, we had hay everywhere and kids running around. And so the park came to life. The park came to life. And I said that night, compare this to what the 8 townhouses that somebody wanted to build here. This is too big for it to be in private hands anymore. It needs to be a public asset. It has become that. And now, of course, being me, I want to make it bigger. I want to get the next piece. There's a couple of red brick buildings there that trying to get through the Community Preservation Fund to become part of the park.
Isn't that where you had that factory, that watch factory?
The watch case factory.
Yes.
This is the other side of town.
Yes.
The watch case factory is on the east side of town, and
Yes.
the park we just created is on the west side of town.
Well, that became like some sort of a housing development, didn't it?
Very, very high-end condominiums,
Yes.
very high penthouses and all. And I think, all things considered, that wasn't a bad outcome because we had this derelict factory sitting there for 20 some odd
I
years
know. Well,
or
that
more.
was before you were involved in
Yeah,
development.
well, long before I was involved.
Yeah.
But the outcome of it's not affordable housing, to be sure,
No.
but it certainly beats the derelict that was there, and it is an interesting architectural presence, and it reflects our history. That was like so much of people say we look a lot like New England, and that's true. And one of the things we look a lot like New England about is there's a big red brick
What
factory.
was the name of that watch? I can't remember.
Well, the family name was Fays, Fayhs, but it was part of Bulova,
Bulova,
the famous
yeah.
Bulova watch company.
Yes.
A fellow came with European artisans who made those kind of products in Europe and around
Yes.
Switzerland and Germany, those places. And he brought them here, set it up, and began making watch cases. And Bulova eventually bought it and made it their factory. But by the 1970s, I would say, into the 80s, it had become obsolete. And so it sat around for a long time. There were a series of owners, and finally somebody came up with a formula, and it went to condominium. Very controversial, but of all things considered, that outcome, it's a good-looking enough facility. You can't knock everything down to Waterfront Park, although I'm tempted sometimes to think we should. So yeah, that came back to life. with this festival we had 2 weeks ago and Harbor Fest before that, the village is emerging from COVID, from the struggles of the last couple of years. And so what we saw on these events, was a pent-up energy and spirit that we haven't seen in a long time. And for the last night of the music festival, practically everybody who came down was a true local, a true Sag Harborite. It wasn't just our summer people or our second residence people. And so it was sort of like the old village coming back to life, and it felt very, very good.
Well, you've done so many things in your life. I don't know which one to talk about. This is only a half-hour show. You were, well, when we first met, you were a playwright. You even won some awards for your writing. Can we touch upon that a little bit?
Well, there's still no Tony or Grammy or no. Years ago, I wrote a play. I submitted it to, as you know, you send it around, you try to get people interested. And in 1997, it's a long time ago now, it won the Playwright's First Award at the Players in New York. So it was prestigious, very exciting. I think I was the oldest new playwright that they ever had. And that was maybe 10 years later, finally got a production at the Abington Theater on 36th Street.
Maybe Bay Street will pick it up since you helped them.
I've tried. I've tried.
And they didn't like it?
Well, that particular play is a serious drama. And their argument is that serious dramas, too serious, too dramatic. Anyway, they have not yet decided to produce it.
Well, I always say if there is a will, there is a way, but we're not going to go into that.
But Guildhall, when after the play got that award in New York, a couple of years later we had moved out here, and I brought it to Guildhall with the producer Patty Watt. I think you know Patty. She's done a lot of work here, and Patty introduced me to Guildhall, and we did a staged reading of it there,
yes.
And we had a very good reaction to it there.
Right.
And then, maybe a year or so later, we did another play of mine, similar format, staged reading, and we took both of those plays back into New York to either the neighborhood playhouse or to the Players, and then put it in the Midtown. The first play, Penang, we put in the Midtown Midtown International Theater Festival, whatever they call it, and it won a nice award there. One of the actors got a top award, and it was got another award based on the story, that it was a story.
So where were you born? Where are you from?
Brooklyn, New York. Can't you tell?
No, from Brooklyn.
Brooklyn, New York.
You went to school there?
I went all through New York City public schools. I have my undergraduate degree from Hofstra, where I majored in political science, and government.
My son went to Adelphi. They had the two colleges.
A rival.
Yeah.
Hofstra and Adelphi, close to one another, were rivals.
And is that where you met your better half?
My better half? No. Dale and I met in Washington when we were both working on Capitol Hill. I was working in the New York delegation to Congress, and Dale was working for the congressman from Beverly Hills. So think about my part of Brooklyn, Staten Island, Beverly Hills. It was quite a contrast.
Yeah.
Well, the average visitor to our office was, a guy looking to get his plumbing license, let's say, and average visitor to their office was Paul Newman, Beverly Hills. So it was a very different, we came from very different environments, to say the least.
They say opposites attract.
Well, we were pretty compatible, but our members of Congress were very different.
Yeah.
And that's where we met. And
you mentioned someplace about your grandchildren. That means you have children.
That's right. The two usually go together. Yeah, we have 3 grown children, all now married, and each family has 2 children, 2 children. So we have 6 grandchildren, which is very, very nice. And they've organized it so well that there are 3 girls and 3 boys
Oh,
among the six
are
of
they
them.
close by?
2 of them are here still in the East. Our son our firstborn, with his 2 children, and his wife live in, and have been here for a year under COVID in Bridgehampton. But
Oh.
they live and work in the city. The children are back to school in the city, but they have now a house here. But with COVID, they were here almost the entire year. And our daughter lives in Brooklyn, downtown Brooklyn, my hometown. And although my grandfather would be horrified to know that everyone hadn't escaped from Brooklyn, because in his generation, the whole idea was to get to Long Island or Staten Island or something. In any event, Amy lives in downtown New York, in downtown Brooklyn. She has 2 little girls, and she and Will have been together quite a while. And we have a third born, our son Michael, who is our only son born in Albany, and he is in California with his wife and family, 2 little boys, and he's in the movie business.
It's wonderful you remember all this.
Well, I see a lot of them. It's all I remember these days.
And trying to figure out like your origin with Larocca. Is that like Italian?
That's an Italian name. My mother was Irish, my father's Italian. And when they got married, that was called a mixed marriage in Brooklyn. They were even in the same parish, but the Italians didn't marry the Irish didn't marry. My parents got married and had 4 children and a good life together. But it was for their parents, particularly on the Irish side, didn't think it was appropriate. It was like a mixed marriage for its day. And that's where we were raised, and that's all the way to when I went away.
Well, okay, I didn't ask you before. What part of Brooklyn, what section was it?
It's called Bay Ridge.
Bay Ridge.
It's where the Verrazano Bridge lands
Yeah,
in
it's
Brooklyn.
close to the border.
And it's Bay Ridge is right on the Narrows, right on the harbor. But when Robert Moses built the Verrazano Bridge, he built a below-grade highway. It's 278, the Brooklyn-Queens Expressway.
Yeah.
And when it comes into Bay Ridge, it goes below grade. So they built this big excavation right through the heart of the neighborhood that my grandfather built. My grandfather was just getting his bearings as a builder when the Depression hit. But he had built a beautiful row of houses on Leif Erikson Park. And his street had a median and semi-detached houses, brick houses, very nice home. Moses came along. They took half the street, just chopped it off halfway up the block, and then it was trucks and traffic, and it changed that part. The whole approach to the Verrazano Bridge changed a good piece of Bay Ridge. Not the entire thing, certainly, and not the more posh neighborhoods, but the working neighborhood took a real hit when the bridge was built.
Well, I bet nobody really knows these things about you.
Well,
Does anybody ever asks you about your past like this?
Sure. I was running, your biography gets some attention. And so I would get asked a lot about, I've worked for 6 governors of New York, so I have a lot of. But the two main one was Governor Kerry, who is a popular figure here. I just saw the family, our annual get-together, the Kerry children. There's a Kerry family charity associated with Paul Kerry, one of the governor's young sons who died of cancer. And every summer there's a gathering in his name to raise money for that and another cancer organization. And so I just saw them all. But I worked for Governor Kerry a long time and stayed in touch with him over the years. And when he finished 2 terms, he was succeeded by Mario Cuomo. So then I worked with Mario. And I had worked with Mario in the cabinet of Governor Carey. So we had came in as peers in the cabinet, and then he became lieutenant governor. And I had a good friendship with him, and I think it's because almost nobody talks to the lieutenant governor. It's just one of those things. But Mario and I were exceptions. We talked to each other. And so when he became governor, he asked me to join his administration, and I did. And that's when I went and became Commissioner of Transportation, DOT, roads and bridges, all of that stuff. And then I did a whole lot of other things. Worked with Andrew Cuomo and with Governor David Patterson, who was an old friend who became governor, a lieutenant governor who moved up.
Mm-hmm.
And before you know it, there's a whole career. So.
And you were also in combat in Vietnam.
Oh, I thought you were going to say, yeah, I'm in combat in Village Hall. That's a different kind of combat.
Yeah.
No, after college, I grew up in the age of the draft. I was about to be drafted into the Army. I decided a better bet would be to go into the Navy, and so I did. And I spent almost 4 years altogether in the Navy, and I was sent to Vietnam on two different tours, and made it out. I'm one of the lucky ones, and it's something that stayed with me my whole life. But I have always recognized that I was lucky.
Yes. And you have any plans for the near future? Not the long term, but the near future. How long is this
The term?
term? Yeah.
The term is just 2 years, which is plenty.
Half of it is gone already.
Well, no, I was only elected in June. The
Oh.
village governments in New York have a June election date.
Yeah.
So I was elected on June 6th. I took on June 15th. I took office on July 6th. So I'm really just 3 months into it.
Yes.
And my plans are to survive it
Survive.
without too many problems. But I want to do more work on Steinbeck Park. I'd like to get more of the surrounding property. And we have a wonderful landscaping plan that we'd like to do. But the essential fact of the park is it's right on the water. And it
Yes.
opens the waterfront to the village. Between the park and the foot of Main Street, there's a red brick building. It's got restaurants and some retail stores. I'd like to get that into the park. And we're talking to Southampton Town about that, because that would open up the park as the sort of the big flourish at the end
Yes.
of Main Street. There's the Long Wharf, which we spent over $4 million redoing in recent years, and made it into much more park-like. It was built as a commercial piece of the waterfront. Even had railroad tracks on there, freight, and all of those things from 150 years ago. Now it's parking for cars. There's a median. It's fully ADA, Americans with Disability Act compliant, and we've got a beautiful railing, fishing spots, and so that now connects to at its base to Windmill Park, the windmill in Sag Harbor. Then there's a nice beach there. Under the bridge to North Haven, you connect now into Steinbeck Park. So we have 3 units of a combined park that's opened up downtown. And my plans are to try to finish that, hopefully to finish it. That means keeping the consensus that we have, that people want it, and finding the money to do it, and then actually getting it done. The other thing is that there's so much development pressure on the waterfront that we're right in the midst now of putting in what they call an overlay code. That's where you take the building code for a community and you make special districts. And this is a special district for the waterfront. And the purpose there is to moderate and make more sane some of the development that people are trying to do. Everybody'd like to have that spectacular waterfront to themselves. Well, we're a community. It's too important to have it taken away from the community. So that's the other thing I'm trying to do, I'd like to do in this term.
Yeah, what I like about the way you describe it, you're actually visualizing this whole thing, which is
Ooh,
wwell.
It's right there in my head, yeah.
So we coming to the end of this wonderful reunion.
Well, that's exactly
And I
what it
want
is.
to thank you again for coming and I would say sitting on my hot seat.
Well, you make it very easy.
So thank you, and I wish you all the luck with your endeavor. It seems like your heart is in it, and that makes a big difference. And
I think in the language that people use, I would say I was reluctant to run, but then I decided to run. I'm all in.
Yes.
I'm in that office before 8 o'clock every day, and probably driving the
and you have a
staff
lovely
crazy.
secretary, whatever you, Connie.
Connie's my assistant, sure. Yeah.
Yes, she's very lovely and efficient.
Yeah. Well,
Yes.
look, she got us together.
Yes.
So it was good. It was good.
So maybe we'll do this again for your next election.
Oh my God, I can't think that far ahead. But I hope you're still writing, and if you're not, you should restart. Because I remember reading one night when you, in this group that you and I were in, we would bring our work and we would read it aloud and then get reaction. And you wrote this beautiful thing relating to your early life and your family
Yes,
in Europe,
that's
which
what
I
I'm
remember
trying
this
to
day.
have staged. No luck so far.
Yeah, well, don't give up. But I do remember it for how, that's got to be 15 or 20 years ago when I first,
Yeah,
and
it
we
has the
counted one
same-
another.
It does. The time has no difference.
Right.
It's like a timeless
But I think
story.
there, for me, but for many people, there is strong interest in stories of life coming out of Europe during World War II.
Well,
all
I
those
don't
years
think
after.
we're on the air anymore. But
Are we done?
maybe you could, I don't know if you can, maybe you could put in a word to the people in Bay Street to reconsider and read it. Honestly read it, because a lot of people just scan through things and nah, no good. No, in my
If I get the
opinion,
opportunity, I will say something.
pardon me?
If I get the opportunity, I will say something to them.
It's, I feel if a person is really interested, we are off the air.
Okay.